everyone, it's Aisha from the Emma Willis Sewing Studio based at the Friendship Cafe in Gloucester, and today I'm going to show you how to make a tool roll for your sewing kit or for some makeup brushes or a pencil roll. And with this one I've made a flap to go on the top so when you roll it up things don't fall out. If you're part of the Emma Willis Sewing Studio sewing groups, you'll receive a kit. If not, the measurements will be down below. And in your kit, you'll receive a selection of fabrics, and you'll also have included in the box some ribbon to use as your tie. Now, you won't need all of them, but you will need to choose which ones you like. So I had 4 in this pack, and I've chosen these 3. Now, on your fabric, if there are little bits of paper, you can remove them by just gently ironing on them and then peeling them off. These came from sample books, which came from Chosen Fabrics. Again, thank you, Chosen Fabrics. So we're going to do a patchwork version of this, and this is made out of 3 pieces too. So to begin with, you will need a ruler or a measure tape. You'll need a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter. Something to hold your fabric together, so clips or some pins. Something to mark your fabric with, either a marking chalk or a pencil. If you're machine sewing, you'll need a matching thread. And if you're sewing at home by hand, then you'll need some hand sewing needles. You'll need to measure out your fabric, and mine is 15 inches wide. Now, if you've got a slightly bigger piece of material, you could go a little bit wider, but I've gone with what I had, so mine is 15 inches wide, and I want it to be in total 34 inches long. And to begin with, I'm just going to put the fabric together. So I'm going to sew along that edge and that edge. So in order to do that, I'm going to put the right sides together and just put a couple of pins to hold it in place. And then the right sides again together on that one. And take them over to the machine and sew a straight stitch there and a straight stitch there. And then I'll show you the next stage. I'm going to do a 3/8 of an inch of a seam here again. I'm just going to stitch straight down. And remember, you've got your right side and your right side facing, and you're stitching on the wrong side. And then do the same on the other pin side. So again, you've got your right side and your right side facing each other. Remove your pins as you go along and finish. Once you've got your 3 pieces sewn together, this is where you need to measure again. I want 34 inches. Now, depending on where you want your fabric, I want this bit on the outside. When my kit is done, this will be the top, this will be the bottom, and it will be like this. So I want 3 fabrics showing on the inside. Now, in order to do that, I need to measure 34 inches. Or if you're doing it like this, if you're doing it with 2 fabrics together, you would need to measure 17 inches. Use your chalk and mark. I'm going to do it on the inside with the right sides facing. Going to get 17 inches there. But I'm going to mark all the way down. Now, if you're using a pair of scissors, you might need to pin this at this point, just so you get a nice even cut. Now, the next bit is to make sure your edges are tidy. So this, as you can see, this side is a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to trim that off. That's 15 by 17. Now, this is a slightly tricky bit, not too difficult, but this is what you need to do next. Now, where your cut edge is, not your folded edge, your cut edge on this side, I want you now to measure 2 inches from that edge and just mark it for now. And then with your ruler, I want you to use your edge there and your corner there and join them up, and then just mark it. So 2 inches here and to that corner there. And then with a pair of scissors or a rotary cutter, just cut all the way down. So that will create that when we've sewn it up. So I'm going to go on over to the machine and sew all the way around this side. So I'm going to sew across there, down here, across here, and I'm going to leave a 3-inch gap. So I can mark that. If you prefer to mark it, you can, and it's a lot easier then because you know where you're going to stop. I'm just going to leave a gap, but if you want to, this is how you do it. So you just mark your 3 inches and you'd stop and back stitch there and then start sewing again and finish off there. On that side, on the opposite side of your marking, is where you need to place your ribbon. So you'll need a piece of ribbon, approximately 70 to 75 centimeters long. Fold it in half and then place it about halfway down. So I'm going to put it just where that seam is and just tuck it in. It needs to be folded and placed there, and then what you can do, just pin it in place so it doesn't move. So I'm going to go on over to the machine. If you pull the ribbon out just slightly, you'll know you've caught it. So just catch it there, push the seam down and sew along the bottom edge, being careful to keep both sides together. It's a good idea to pin in a couple of places just to keep it in the position that you want it to stay in. Now, remember we made that marking here. I can see my chalk mark there. So that's where I'm going to stop. It's just a reminder, so you do leave an opening, otherwise you won't be able to turn it the right way around. You just stop, reverse stitch, cut your thread. Now, where the other marking was, so we're going to start again there, reverse stitch, just flatten your fabric and finish. Now for the next bit. With this one, you don't necessarily have to finish off the edges because they'll be tucked inside and we're going to top stitch them. But if you want to, you can use pinking shears to trim them. But at this stage, now what we're going to do is we're just going to trim the corners again. Be careful not to trim the stitches. And then we're going to turn our kit the right way around. You can trim off some of them. I'm going to trim off some of these loose threads as well. Get your fingers into the corner and turn that round. Push the next corner out. Just carefully start pulling it out. And that's why the back stitching is really important at the opening, because it can easily just fall apart if you don't do that. Turn it the right side round, pull your ribbons out, push your corners out. So what you should end up with is something that looks like this, with an open side with a ribbon. Now the next bit is to fold that over. Fold it over approximately 5 inches, so up to about there, and then just put a pin in there to keep that straight. And then fold this one level with the edge. You might want to iron it out just to get your seams nice and flat. And just put a pin in there. Now, this is the bit that you need to be really mindful of. So this is going to create our pockets. Now, if you're making it for some makeup brushes and the makeup brushes, the handles are round, you'll need the space. So I suggest you actually put in the items that you want to use it for, and then use a marker. Chalk is probably best because it's on the right side of the fabric and you don't want to mark it with something that doesn't come off. With the chalk you can just mark and then just rub off and they completely disappear. So they're great to use on fabric. So for mine, I want some narrow ones and I want some wider ones. So I want some wider ones to put things like my snips in, and I want some narrow ones to put things like pencils or a pen or some measure tape. So I'm going to randomly do a couple of different lengths. You have to do it depending on what you're going to store in them. So for my pencil, I've got about 1 inch for that gap. Now, it's slightly bigger than the pencil because when you measure the pencil, it's only 1/2 inch, but you need the room so you can tuck it in. My gaps, I'm going to do a mixture of, I'm going to leave 1/2 inch at the end there, and I'm going to start my first one at 1/2 inch. So I'm going to do about 3 at 1 inch each. So 1, 2, 3 at 1 inches each. And then I'll do a few that are about 2 inches. And I'll do another couple that are 1 inch. Don't want to do the ends at the moment. Be careful not to sew these ends. So sew your channels first. Make sure that your inside nice and flat. About 5 inches is usually nice. And you can mess around with this. So if you feel like it's not enough for you, what you want to store, you can make it slightly higher. Now, if you feel confident, you can then take this on over to the machine and just sew your channels. Or if you feel you need a little bit more help, you can draw your lines down. Now, I'm going to go on over to the machine and just go ahead and sew, but this is what you can do, or you can mark with a pin. If you're hand stitching this, you can easily do decorative stitches, or something like a chain stitch would look beautiful across there. So can you see what I've done? I've just marked them, my spaces. I think I'm going to leave a 2 inch one on this side. Remember, the space will need to be wider than what you're using. There we go, and I'm going to take that over to the machine, and so I'm aiming for the end here. I'm going to back stitch here, and I'm also going to back stitch here. So my first one is about 1.5 inches. So I'm aiming for here. Start, just back stitch. If you don't have an automatic cut-off, which most of you won't because this is an industrial machine, just use your cutter or a pair of snips to trim off those threads. So once you've done all your channels for your tools, or for your makeup brushes, or for whatever you're using it for, we're going to finish off the outside edge, and we're also going to close up our opening, and we can do that all in one go. So I'm going to start with a top stitch and edge stitch it all the way around. So I'm just going to back stitch there, and it will give it a really nice finish on the outside. There we go, and come up to the corner. Now this is the bit that you need to make sure you tuck in really well. So you're tucking your seam allowance in there. We're just coming over the other side now where the ribbon was placed. Trim off any excess threads. I'm going to take it over to the cutting table and see if my tools fit. So now we have a completed sewing kit roll made out of a patchwork of fabrics. I find that something that's got a bit more weight, so upholstery fabric or curtain fabric, always seems to work a lot better, and it's a bit sturdier, a bit stronger. Now we'll just try it out. There we go, and to close it, you put the flap over and just fold your kit over. Hope you enjoyed the sewing kit tutorial from the Emma Willis Studio. I'm Aisha. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe and follow, and I hope to see you again soon.